Yesterday we said that the ancients have given this expression to beautify the body by beautifying the mind. And we are here to put it down to practice the truth of this saying. If one is not controlling one's behaviors by body and speech, and if we leave them out of control, uncontrolled, especially those from the developed countries are used to living freely without controlling these behaviors because they are experiencing material wealth so that they are getting whatever they want, so they leave their mind, body and speech uncontrolled and do whatever they like without restricting their behaviors. So by leaving the mind of body, speech uncontrolled, out of control, they may be happy, they may be able to enjoy life. Especially they may be able to enjoy sensual pleasures, craving for pleasurable visible objects, sweet sound, sweet smell, sweet taste, good touch in respect of both animate and inanimate objects. In this way they are fully enjoying life with sensual pleasures. Sometimes going to extreme cases of greed and hatred, they may not be able to control themselves, leading to wrongdoing by body and speech. So nowadays, because they are living freely, they in fact they get these diseases which cannot be cured by ordinary means. They take drugs and intoxicants and enjoy sensual pleasures. In this way, because they leave their mind uncontrolled, or they leave their behaviors out of control, because they are enjoying sensual pleasures as much as they like, their life become miserable, become despicable, because as the aftermath of this enjoyment, they are bound to suffer the evil consequences, such as violence and wild behaviors. And nowadays there are these psychiatric diseases or psychological diseases such as tension, stress and depression. All these things arise because they live very freely. Although they are enjoying good standard, good living conditions. So if you look at your own life, you will find it that you end up with misery. You end up in misery. That is because you leave the mind uncontrolled, because mind is the main thing to be controlled. You are not controlling all of your physical and verbal behaviors. So with negligence in the control of these behaviors, you are bound to suffer great loss, with the result that you'll be remorseful afterwards. And the Buddha does not want you to be like this. He says the controlling or restraint of behaviors is good, it's commendable, so that you will not make mistakes. You control your behaviors, both physical, verbal, especially mental behaviors are to be controlled with the practice of Atthasamapaniti, conducting oneself in the right way, straightening the path of your mind. In the beginning, of course, if you control or practice the restraint of your behaviors, you may feel uncomfortable because you have not had this practice before. You are not habituated to this kind of practice. So this will happen to both local and foreign yogis. But if they are able to bear these things, the inconvenience in the beginning, they are bound to realize the real peace and happiness. By controlling yourself, you can put yourself on the right track. Your life is set to become rectified, straightened, and for this you got to practice the restraint of your behaviors. There are two things. One is the teachings, which are the exact guidance for practice to realize happiness, and together with it there are these rules of conduct, disciplinary rules, so we have to follow them. In the beginning you may feel very uncomfortable because of these things. In a sense, if you are not restraining yourself, you'll be relaxed, there'll be slackness, which is not commendable. Now when you control it, restrain it, there will be no laxity. Instead, there will be prosperity as an aftermath of your restraint of behaviors. So these two things, namely the teachings which are the exact guidance to realize happiness, and the rules of conduct for you to behave, so that they will help you not to be downgraded or degraded. Instead, you will be uplifted gradually, and such is the benefit of the practice. By purifying, by cultivating your behaviors, they will become pure, cultured, tamed, gentle, free from suffering, and become lovable. Such are the benefits of the practice. Such is the path laid down by the Buddha. So, in the beginning, you may feel uncomfortable because of the restraint of behaviors, but if you do it with patience, you are bound to realize the benefits of the practice. What we have now discussed has been confirmed by the Buddha, or confirmed by what the Buddha has said in the Dhamma, in the Chitta section on mind. And according to this verse, the Buddha has given the nature of the mind as one which is difficult to see, because it is only a consciousness or knowing. It is the nature of knowing, unlike the obvious solid material things such as the material things of the element of the earth, Prithvi Dhatu. It is not as solid as these material things, because as for these material things, they are very obvious. And when we talk about this element of cohesion or solidity, when they gather together, or they are combined together, they are very obvious, can be seen, and you can feel the heat or cool or warmth. All these things are obvious. So are these sensations such as stiffness, tension, movement. All these things are very obvious, whereas not so with the mind. It is difficult to see or feel. Such is the nature of the mind as given by the Buddha. And it is said that the mind is very subtle. You cannot see it by ordinary means. As for material things, even the minute things can be seen through microscope. Whereas in the case of the mind, you cannot see it even with the finest microscopes. And this expression is given, Yatha Kama Nipatino. That is, this mind has no regard or no consideration for one's own status, whether one has such high status as occupation, as regards occupation, or as regards one's family, or one's status or conditions, and it will go anywhere it likes without regard to your status or conditions. Such is given by this expression, Yatha Kama Nipatino. And then this sentence, Chitam Rakhiya. One should protect or guard one's mind. Who are to guard the mind? Those of you here are to guard the mind, not other people. Those who are not wise, those who are fools or stupid, will not be able to guard their mind. You can practice the protection of the mind first by means of intellectual reasoning, the power of reasoning, known as Pitisankana Bala. Those who possess this kind of power will be able to protect their mind. And then from there you can advance to the practice of the Satipatthana, mindfulness practice, by which you can energize the power of bhavana, mental development. So you have to control the mind. What are the benefits of guarding the mind? And this expression is given, Chaitan Gautam Sukhavaham. If you guard the mind, this guarded mind will bring happiness. If you protect the mind in a suitable way, then you will prevent all these unwanted things, undesirable impurities from arising in your stream of consciousness. These will be prevented from arising. If they are prevented, then you will be secure. Gupti. Then, if you are secure from bondage, then these impurities will not attack you, will not affect you. You'll be free from that. So you get freedom from these impurities. In this case, this kind of freedom is a desirable freedom, because you are free from bondage of these afflictive emotions. Thus, you will not be agitated or afflicted by greed, nor by anger or aversion, nor by delusion or cloudiness of the mind. Thus, you will be led to realize peace, known as Santi. Now, which one brings Santi or peace? The one whose mind is guarded, whose mind is secure, will bring happiness. This is the immediate benefit of the practice. If you note, if you activate your mindfulness just one moment, you will be peaceful, you will be at peace for one moment. If you practice for 2 moments, you will be at peace for 2 moments. And if you are able to practice continuously for 1 minute at the rate of 1 per second, then you will be at peace 60 times. So in this way, if you are practicing for many minutes or hours, you can imagine how much you will be able to feel to be at peace, being free from the bondage of these afflictive emotions, namely craving, aversion and delusion, because they have no chance of arising in your stream of consciousness. And then if you are able to progress along the path of insight knowledge, until when you reach the maturity, you realize the path and fruition knowledge of the Noble One, then this controlled or guarded mind will bring peace and happiness. Now, what is this practice? To pacify the mind, to protect the mind, it is none other than what we have said a few days ago, namely, Sadarekena Cittasa Samanagato. That is, when the Buddha says, what is this one thing by which one can guard the mind? The one thing which can guard the mind is the practice of mindfulness. By means of mindfulness, we can guard the mind. That is, practicing the mindfulness with the mobilization of full mental powers, by guarding the mind with vigilant mindfulness of whatever arises. Whatever arises means whatever we see, hear, taste, touch and so on. All these things are to be noted and known. So, if you are able, as you practice, as your yogis are doing, by practicing mindfulness, when they are doing it, developing it, then you are bound to realize the benefits in a wonderful manner, thus leading to prosperity and increase in greatness. Now, I would like to give you the story as given in the Dhamma Desana exposition or discourse given by the Buddha while he was living in Savatthi, regarding a monk who felt discontent, although he had much faith and confidence. So what we are going to say now about this story of a monk may be in keeping with some of you who are here, so you can check out whether you are in the same position. So the story goes like this. While the Buddha was living in Savatthi, the son of a rich person came to the monastery and approached an elderly monk and requested him like this: Venerable Sir, I want to be free from suffering. So please give me a method, a teaching. Please teach me how to be free from suffering. So by this, although he was a son of a rich person, he meant to say that the material richness did not bring any genuine happiness. So he wanted to be free, or to realize freedom, and for this he approached this elderly monk to give him a method to be free from suffering. So the senior monk agreed to teach him. So he said like this: if you wish to be free from suffering, you should do acts of generosity, such as periodical offering of food and requisites. When we say periodical, if one offers every day, it might be burdensome. So there were periodical offerings. So the senior monk advised him to do this generosity periodically, and sometimes offer his robes at the beginning of the Lent or end of the Lent, robes and 4 requisites. And also the senior monk advised the lay person to divide the latter's property into 3 parts, namely 3 parts, so that one part would be to be devoted to one's own business, the second part would be to be used for looking after the family, and the last part to be used for generosity, acts of generosity. So he agreed to do accordingly, and he divided his property into 3 portions and offered requisites as already agreed. And for those for him who had much faith and confidence, was not content with just the acts of generosity, and he asked what are other things that he should do, other good things that he should do. So he agreed to do accordingly. Of course, it is quite natural to do acts of generosity, because by acts of generosity, you are helping those who are in need of material things. And of course, it is not yet the practice of a higher discipline, namely the practice of moral conduct. So he asked the senior monk what else should he do for more merit. And the senior monk advised him to take refuge in the 3 gems, then to take precepts, and then what else to do? He advised 10 precepts, and that was the maximum which a lay person can practice. In this way, if one is able to give away one's properties as much as one can, sharing one's belongings with others, one is overcoming one's selfish interest. And then this extreme case of extreme greed will be overcome by this acts of generosity. And then if one is giving way with loving kindness, wishing for the welfare of others, wishing that others or the receiver of one's generosity, dana, may be fulfilled with the wants. One is free from the anger, aversion. Thus one is overcoming the extreme form of greed and hatred. So every time one is doing this act of generosity, if one is doing it with loving kindness, later on you make it a practice and you become a person who practices loving kindness, a possessor of metta, wishing for the welfare of others, but not wishing for others' suffering. In this way, you'll be able to build up the quality of patience, forbearance, tolerance. And because you are doing with metta, there is no anger, aversion. And because you are doing with compassionate feeling, you are free from acts of cruelty, so that you are overcoming the extreme form of afflictive emotions. You are also doing it with the understanding that such acts of generosity are pure and commendable, because you understand it. You have full understanding. Thus you are free from delusion, cloudiness of mind. You are seeing things clearly now. Thus you are free from this delusion, another afflictive emotion. As the saying goes, if you know how to give, it is good. It is commendable. So, in this way, by doing these things, you are opening the way to the practice of moral virtues. Thus there will be no wrongdoing by indulging in the excessive forms of greed and hatred. Because you are doing this act of generosity, dana, and this is not doing for your own interest, but for the interest of others, for the welfare of others. It becomes easy for you to sustain the moral virtues, to sustain the precepts. Thus, it becomes easy for you to take refuge in the three gems, the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, to take or observe 5 precepts, and thence to 10 precepts. And thus, the senior monk was very intelligent to advise this lay person in this way, so that this lay devotee became familiar with the Buddha's sasana, Buddha's dispensation. About more than 2,000 years ago, in India, there lived an emperor known as Ashoka. He left behind these inscriptions, edicts, which says that although dana kusala has no capital in it, it is opening the path to the practice of Dhamma if you know how to practice this act of generosity. If you do that, then you are said to be doing with good capital or good purpose, thus overcoming the excessive or extreme form of afflictive emotions and opening the path to the practice of Dhamma without any expectations of material gains, fame and honor. Such is the practice of parami dana, acts of generosity, which has the quality of performing perfections. Parami dana, sharing. One is sharing one's belongings with others without any self-interest in terms of material gains and so on, without looking for one's own interest or benefit, wishing others to be able to enjoy or to possess the things that you are giving away. And the only interest for yourself is to be free from existential suffering, which is very important. Such is act of generosity with good purpose, or noble purpose, wishing for the welfare of others and only wishing for one's own freedom from existential suffering, which is a noble purpose. And in this way, you will be praised by many that you are noble, doing with noble purpose. This way, this parami, perfections, is the one which is done only by noble people. As for those who are not noble or of low standard, will not do like this. They may do wholesome deeds like acts of generosity only for one's own interest. Only when one is going to gain the material fame, gain and honor. Such people belong to the low, inferior level. So, in this way, this kind of person who belongs to the low class, will not wish for one's own liberation from suffering when one is doing this kind of wholesome deed. So this parami, the perfection, is not concerned with such people. So which kind of people are concerned with parami? That is, those people who are doing it with loving kindness and compassion for the sake of others and only wishing for one's own liberation. Such is the act of performance of perfections, parami. Now, the young devotee which we are talking about is in this position. He is wishing for his own liberation from suffering, which is pure parami kusala, something which we should follow. So in this way, if one is able to give away, which is a good purpose, but in most cases, people are attached to one's own belongings, and if you can do this act of generosity in this way, then you will be free from the extreme form of greed, hatred and afflictive emotions. Then when you are doing this, that is act of generosity, others are sharing your belongings, they are enjoying your belongings, properties. By observing it, you'll be very happy. Such is mudita, sympathetic joy. Because it is a rare thing to be able to possess this sympathetic joy if others are enjoying benefits. Now, if you are doing it with metta karuna, then there will be this sympathetic joy. The mind will become serene. One will become free of envy and avarice, and will be able to possess good, beautiful mental states. We will carry on. We will continue this tomorrow.